Cindy,
Hello, everybody. I'll call the Rocco Historic Preservation Commission meeting to order. Roll call, please, Randy. Here. Is absent.
I'm not hearing.
Sorry, Karen, I'll start over. Cindy?
Here.
Eddie?
Absent.
Dallas? Excused. Aaron? Randy's here. Lucy? Here. Karen?
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a quorum. First period for public comment. There's nobody here. Is anybody online, Nate? Other than our Studio GWA people and Karen?
nope, just Karen and Michael.
Approval of previous meeting minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Lucy, second by Aaron to approve the minutes. Any further discussion? Thank you, Randy, for doing it. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye, Karen?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Minutes are approved. Discussion and possible action concerning the Local History and Historic Preservation Conference, October 15th through 17th at Ho Chunk Gaming and Conference Center. I just wanted to bring it up, make sure everybody's on their radar.
I registered. I'm going to go.
Oh, yay.
Mhm.
Good for you.
Yep.
I will be out of town, so I'm not going. Normally I would go. Nice. Ho Chunk. Are you going to go, Aaron? Anybody else able to go? Well, anyway, Lucy, maybe you can report back to us.
Sure.
Put you on the agenda.
Mhm.
Oh, great. Thank you. Glad to hear it. Karen, were you going to go?
Not planning, sorry. Mhm.
Okay, moving on. Thank you, Lucy. Discussion and possible action on historic preservation plan. Virtual review with Michael Smith and Ashley Carver of Studio GWA. Hi,
Oh, hi everyone. I'm going to take that as my cue to that the proverbial mic has been passed over to me. I will also say that it is just me this evening. Ashley is on vacation. So I told Nate here a couple hours ago, I have all the windows open, all the tabs open, ready to go, and we'll be feverishly typing away for our comments. So before I share my screen, I first just want to say thank you everybody for reviewing the narrative version of the Historic Preservation Plan and providing comments. I actually was back from vacation here as of this morning and started incorporating edits on the rec plan. I'm about 10% of my way through the edits on the preservation plan. So they are not incorporated into a revised document yet. I'm somewhat familiar with them, but I'll just ask for a little bit of patience if there's something that I may not be fully dialed in. But I do have comments from Aaron and Cindy, all tabulated and ready to go if we want to pinpoint a particular one. So our focus this evening, if everybody is on the same page with this, I'd like to focus on the Historic Preservation Plan chapter of the report, which in the final document will be chapter 5, but in your existing document, which was distributed on August 28th, should just be titled Historic Preservation Plan. This is where the goals, the value statements, the action, the vision statement is all located. I also feel like it's important to preface that there's a few iterations going on here. So as I mentioned, everybody has a document that was distributed on August 28th. But since then, this plan has gone through a few revisions. The first was we all met the week of September 8th during last month's Preservation Committee meeting to discuss the latest report and the latest version of the vision and the goals and the actions section. Subsequent weeks, we've also corresponded with Nate and Cindy, and there's been some revisions that have occurred as well. You'll see some language has been changed in the goals and the actions, and there's been minor consolidation. The rec plan has more substantial consolidation, which is not the focus of right now, but so you might see some modest changes. You might see some of your comments already addressed or potentially revised based on the latest edits to this section. So I just wanted to preface our discussion tonight with that. And I guess my roadmap for this evening is what I'd like to do is share what we're calling the InDesign document, right? Which is just the software we're using to make it more graphically appealing. I think it's a little bit more palatable to see everything in that final layout. And we're just going to focus again on Chapter 5, Historic Preservation Plan. I think it's just a little easier to see everything there. And if time permits, we'll scale out a little bit, and you can see what I'm calling the final draft, because really I have the next commission meeting in mind as well. And just want you to kind of see the big picture and how things are coming together. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen. And let me make sure my window is accurate here. It should be. Hopefully everybody sees this okay. And as I mentioned, I have a couple windows open. So I do have our August 28th submission that you should have in hand. So if we need to dial in there, we certainly can. But as I mentioned, everything is here
Mike?
in Chapter 5. Yes.
Does everybody have 924? Or is it just Nate and Randy and I that have the 924 edition? Aaron, you don't know
Yep.
what, there's a date on yours. You don't have it with you though. Yeah,
That's probably the one I responded.
I just was curious. I thought we forwarded the 924 one on, but maybe not.
Yeah, and it might have been, I know that Kristen might have sent that email. I can't remember the date that she distributed the reminder email to everybody. That may have been the 24th originally. But I believe the last edited version of that document was August 28th. So,
Okay.
so with that said, I'd like to at least go through and show you a bit of Chapter 5.
There, yeah,
Some of this content I think you've seen through last month's meeting and
Michael?
shouldn't. Yes.
we don't
It's
see
it's
your,
not on the screen.
Oh, it says that I'm sharing here. Sorry. Let's try this again. I apologize.
There we go.
Is that good? Okay, great. It looks like I toggled one that wasn't open. Okay, much better. Sorry about that. Yeah, so everything here, you should see some familiar phrasing, some familiar language. The vision statement, which has been discussed, reviewed last month with no further edits at this point. We also have discussed in previous commission meetings value statements, and then these goals and actions. I want to draw your attention to a couple things here. Subsequent pages are going to have the goals and actions in table form, and the implementation variables that we've assigned to each action are going to include both a time frame, either ongoing, 1 to 3 years, 4 to 7, or 8 to 10. And then we've just put simple acronyms together as potential partners to help accomplish the recommendation. Obviously, the lead here is either going to be city staff or the Historic Preservation Commission. You're going to see this acronym used quite a bit, and we can discuss that as we get to that page. You'll also see here these goals and actions. As I just mentioned a moment ago, some of these are rephrased, some of them are consolidated. So just keep this in mind as you have certain actions. You might have an action J that is now an action I, for example. Or you might have issue with a certain phrasing that has since been addressed. So I just want to kind of show you this, and then we can start to pinpoint certain comments as we go. It's distinct from the recreation plan in that we have provided some more narrative here, as well as a subsequent implementation table. So you'll see each of the goals and the respective actions in here. I'm not sure why that is not different color there. Sorry about that. Goals and actions for goal 2, goal 3, goal 4. And again, not leaving you to read this now, just as a point of reference for upcoming discussion. And then in these tables, we've just provided a more simplified action and assigned timeframes to these. Now, Nate and Cindy are aware that unlike the Corp, this has not been reviewed by staff or commission members, these timeframes. Now, we've heard through anecdotes or through dialogue between commission staff, like something might be more important than others, but at this point, I'm just putting a preliminary point on a time frame here. So we can certainly discuss these things as we go. And then, as I mentioned, acronyms for respective partners are here. Again, I want to give you a little bit more to look at rather than just the narrative document, which, is now about 5 weeks old. So, but again, all the actions, timeframe partners are here with each respective goal. For goal 3, some of them where there's a lot of goals, I've just split them into 2 pages for ease of reading. And that is that section. So what I figured we could do is spend, 20 to 30 minutes going through some of these items. I'll keep this latest version up by default because I think it's a little easier to read both the narrative and these tables. But I'm also mindful that there's a discrepancy between this latest document and the document that you've received on the 28th, which I also have handy here. So Nate, I think I've prefaced it fairly well. Nate and Cindy, are there any other things you'd like to provide some context on before we start to discuss this particular section?
I don't think so.
Yeah, one thing I'll throw out there for the group is I spoke to Michael ahead of this meeting specifically regarding the Park and Rec meeting. Kale and I had a conversation very briefly today, and we thought it would be particularly helpful for Michael to be able to show the new version of the goals and actions, specifically because he mentioned that there was a lot more consolidation on the comprehensive outdoor rec plan. So I think that would be to Michael's question of like, which version do you want to look like? It may be more helpful for the group, or my thought would be is it might be more helpful to the group to look at the newest reiteration because it is the leading version right now and make your comments to that versus going backwards. But you can use that older one as reference, like, hey, there's something missing. Can you go back to the other one and talk about this particular item? Does that work for the group, or does anybody want to use the 828 version as?
I thought he was going to use the latest one. I guess I
Okay.
misunderstood.
No,
Yeah.
that makes sense. And I think he was. I was just clarifying.
Yep.
I just wanted to ask Michael, all the other stuff I sent to you that is about stuff that's prior to the topics, I assume you're working on that?
Yeah, so at risk of bombarding folks with tables, yeah, so every comment that I've received so far is in here. And what I'm doing, again, the corp is everything's addressed there, but I started this around like 1:30 this afternoon, and have not been able to go through everything. But just so you can kind of see my game plan is to break everything down by the document that each of you have in hand. I have just a master Word doc that we've been using to update since the 28th. And then that syncs into our InDesign, like our more graphically appealing document. And the reason why I'm doing this is because there's page discrepancies, right? As we add more text, this gets this number changes. As we add maps and figures, this changes. So, but what I'm doing is I'll go through your comments. If we've discussed, I believe it was the 29th last week, where particularly we focused on goals and actions, those have all been addressed. So you'll see them at the bottom, but I just want to officially mark them as, addressed or resolved. So I think that I've answered your question, but I'm glad they're in here because I want to double check one more time and make sure that everything is addressed.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And I did receive some comments from Aaron as well. And I've been working backwards. He had kind of 50-50 split on some historic context additions and particular actions. And again, I'm about halfway through his. And Cindy, I know I've addressed most of yours, but not officially checked them off on this spreadsheet. But happy to discuss others that folks, may have curated or just have some that they're bringing forth this evening.
I did want to confirm that Eckhart Park was established in 1917. I did confirm.
Oh.
today at
Yeah, and what's funny, I looked back at source material. I don't know where 1911 came from one bit, and that source was wrong. You did point me to the right Vernon County Historical Society link. I actually just replaced it with the survey of page from the 2001 survey, which is saying the same thing. Some sentences have two sources. I figured it was appropriate just to have one, but I did correct that to say 1917.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So I did get to that one because it was also in the corp, but I just haven't gotten into everything on the HPP yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Michael, did we want to maybe start at that first page of the goals then?
That'd be good. Yeah, and I could certainly just, go through the actions, like make present them in a more concise manner, and maybe that might bring up some questions if that's okay.
Yeah, and if you could zoom in, it's
Yeah.
quite, yeah, right there would be perfect, and I think I
Okay.
can see that a little bit better.
Now, what I haven't done is since last week, as I mentioned, I believe I've incorporated the comments that we had when we were discussing between Cindy and Nate on the 29th. I haven't brought those in an official spreadsheet to have some comments or like context behind that. We were on the phone and kind of making notes as I go. But if I'm missing some context, let me know, Cindy and Nate. I'll go through some of them though here for goal 1. The goal titles and their like respective goal statements haven't changed, but again, some of the action letters and the phrasing have. So this is pursue a CLG grant to fund a consultant-led citywide survey. And this was rightfully so at the request of Cindy to basically we've condensed what was 2 separate actions and brought them into one to say, well, gosh, if we're gonna, do a citywide survey, be really great if we could procure that funding through a CLG grant and let them do that work. And then you'll see here the intent of this action is to, identify potential structures over 45 years old that could be historically significant and including content in the existing 2001 Historic Buildings Survey report. Twofold explanation here. This is to provide an update for the 2001 survey, which is starting to approach the end of its useful life, right? Surveys should be updated every 25 to 30 years. But also, we felt that the historic context section from like 1945 up to 1975, if a citywide survey was conducted, it would capture newer items that are potentially in a period of significance, right? So it just brings things more up to speed citywide and updates the existing historic buildings survey report. And then really drives it towards the more important need, which is getting that through a grant. So I think the spirit of that action's there. It's just a bit sharpened. I'm going to go a bit more quickly just because there are like 33 of these, but please interrupt me if needed. So, yep. And then action B, which is take that citywide survey upon adoption to the Wisconsin Historical Society. And you'll see a couple actions throughout this plan of basically recognizing that, information that the statewide SHPO has and the historic preservation have, like we want that information, that data as a two-way street that's as free and as open as possible. The most likely scenario is going to be that any information that's generated is at that local level, and it would be to the benefit of the SHPO to have that latest survey so they can update their inventory. Likewise, there might be some information that gets to the Historical Society, the State Historical Society, that you might not be privy to. And it'd be nice to just have a touch point ongoing throughout the 10-year period, to make sure that you just have the latest and greatest information they have there. There's another action coming to that. Just wanted you to be mindful of that. Just open dialogue, two-way street. Action C, this has kind of been dialed back a little bit. It was trying to see if there's interest from community members in a Wiki History Days event, which is basically addressing a commissioner comment last month or maybe in July of just trying to see if we can have preservation be more of a community affair where some folks can volunteer by taking photographs of every street facing elevation of existing and proposed historic resources. We also qualify this further by saying that this activity could supplement or preempt a survey if CLG funds are not awarded, and just be like a community engagement activity. But I can say for a survey perspective, a consultant could find that really helpful to have those photographs taken. So action D, develop a standard operating procedure documenting the conditions of a local, state, or national landmark or property otherwise determined to be historically significant by the Viroqua Historic Preservation Commission that is slated for demolition or substantial alteration. You may recall this previous action specified like HABS level, which stands for Historic American Building Survey, which is kind of a federal process for documenting a building. We've talked internally and felt that that might be a pretty onerous task that might not be warranted for every property slated for demolition or substantial alteration. So we're dialing it back a little bit to say, a standard operating procedure just could be, a simple documentation at the commission level, just to make sure that the same end is met, meaning the story is told of a historic resource, and that's not lost, right? Obviously, if it's a local landmark building with protections, that's going to go through a process. But we just felt that HABS or DPR 523 was another phrase we used that it's pretty time intensive, cost intensive, and it's just not required, in our opinion, for every property. So this just gives you kind of a little bit more flexibility. Sorry, action E. Sorry, let me catch this. Page 47, actually needs to be 2026 to 2036. Sorry.
Aaron has a question or comment.
So what would be the level of standard that would trip the switch that causes us to do that recording? And the reason I'm asking is because I'm a little bit concerned that in some regard, if we're talking about the urban character, or the community character of Viroqua, that if we go through and start knocking out teeth like that, the building itself may not be significant, but the context of, the street it's on or the neighborhood it's in. So what, might be impaired by, knocking down a bunch of buildings like that. At a certain point, you sort of lose the character of the street or the neighborhood. And I'm wondering, what's the standard at which we would, it would be warranted to document the property?
Aaron, if I understand it correctly, this is something that we would do if a building is slated for demolition, that we couldn't save or decided for whatever reason, like the old city hall, maybe that would be a good example.
Yeah.
We would record it, get pictures, do all this other kind of thing, just so we have some document of what building was there.
Oh, I thought Michael said that it wouldn't necessarily be all buildings that are slated for demolition. Did I get that wrong?
Yeah.
It's all
No, you're
buildings?
right. I think what Aaron said somewhere in there was that
Somewhere in
No,
there. Sorry. No,
but
you're
no,
right.
it's okay. Is that in that sentence it says or property otherwise determined to be historically significant by the Viroqua Historic Preservation Commission. I think your question was, how do we determine what's historically significant but not yet landmarked, right? That's kind of what you're getting
Yeah,
at.
that was a good way of getting rid of 5 minutes of my verbiage.
That's a time.
I know, I'm sorry.
No, I think she's talking about
Yeah, all the time, we're supposed to be deciding if something's historically significant.
right. And I guess, Aaron, are you asking, like, is there a procedure? And I think it's maybe within the rest of this plan. I think that's the purpose of a citywide survey, a purpose of the AHI, right, is to start identifying some of these undesignated yet potentially significant buildings for which that demolition or that documentation process would then unfold, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are two aspects to it. One is the buildings, each individual building, but the other aspect of it is that, if you start taking out buildings on Main Street, at what point does Main Street stop having the character it has?
Mhm.
And, you know, an example of that, I don't know what the tech school site looked like before they put that building up. But it's the character of that block is probably significantly different from what it was before that building was put in. And I'm not, criticizing what was done. I'm just saying that, at what point, what you said.
Right.
Mhm.
Yes, I'm not understanding. To me, all this does is say, hey, if something's going to be torn down that's historically significant and you can't do anything about it.
Yeah, but what's the definition of historically significant?
We do all the time.
Yeah. And
But
if
think,
I could interject,
Thing that was
um,
passed has a history to
We
it.
have that written up in our brochure.
There are
mhm.
some buildings that are not themselves, buildings that might be significant, but as a group on that block, it contributes to it. And so I'm asking, what is the standard where we would actually choose to document a building that's going to be knocked down?
Mhm. And
Uh,
I don't think it'd be that big a deal. Either way,
yeah,
we're-
and I think I believe I completely respect what you're saying, and I would also caution anyone to interpret action D in a way that doesn't preclude kind of the existing safeguards that you already have in place through local landmarks and through listed buildings at the national level, right? So to the former, obviously there you have more stringent requirements. There's more protections at that local level. But then through items that are on the National Register or contributing to the downtown district, that is honorary, but there are still triggers like a Section 106 process that can protect those buildings. To get to the kind of crux of this action, the goal is for, buildings whose demolition status is kind of all but certain, right? And this is not just for, a property that is, structurally unsound because of, a neglected property. It could be through a storm event, a fire, things like that. So it's not to say that it's basically, that a building is going to be getting demolished. And so how do you want to document that in a way that is going to be still making sure that your architectural heritage is still documented? Why we tried to dial this back is to say, a HABs level, which is usually the federal requirement for buildings that are like listed on the National Register, that can be tens of thousands of dollars with a consultant involved, right? And just has, as Ashley has mentioned previously, like you have to use archival photography methods, black and white cameras, physically developed print, things like that. And we just thought that that might be a bit much for properties. So I don't think this action precludes what Aaron is mentioning and doesn't eliminate the safeguards in place.
Michael?
Yep.
Can you hear us okay?
Yes.
Okay. I don't think that's the concern here.
Okay.
I fundamentally don't think that's the concern here. I think
Yeah.
the fundamental question that Aaron keeps trying to pose is, and I'll take a step further, Aaron. This goal says maintain a comprehensive inventory and designation program for historic cultural resources that serve as an authoritative data set for every preservation action, right? So we're talking about building a data set saying like, these are the buildings we are concerning ourselves with, whether they themselves are historically potentially significant or as a group, Aaron, present as historically significant. Does this goal and all the action steps underlying it collectively deliver an understanding of what is historically significant, or do we need an additional action step that says develop a rubric or criteria sheet for determining whether a building or a set of buildings is historically significant? Like, I'm just stretching it out here and saying, if I'm pulling your thread of thought, is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah.
Okay.
and you could actually combine action, you could solve the question I have with action D by actually going through and action C and having, volunteers basically stand on the curb opposite every house in town or every building in town and take a picture, and then we would have an inventory of the exteriors of those front facades. And, and that might ameliorate the problem of, having to come in and decide what level of importance the to be demolished buildings of action D are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I don't think we're trying to decide what exactly we're going to do. I think this is just a high level plan of deciding like, should it be a goal that
Yeah.
we think about that, right? And so I'll look at the other people on the side of the table as like, does any of this track with anybody else? I feel like it's sort of like this back and forth that Aaron are having, and Cindy's kind of like, well, this is fundamentally what we do anyway. And I don't disagree with you. So can somebody else on that side of the table weigh in on this for me? Because I don't know if I'm off track now as well.
All right.
This is Karen. I do agree that, the criteria need to be established in a way that we and consistent process. So I'm hearing what Aaron has said as being making sense. So, I'm agreeing. Let's that's a detail we should sort of make sure we're all on the same page when we're using the words, are we all envisioning the same thing?
Mhm. Yeah, any other comments?
So I just want to make sure before we get off that topic that
Hmm.
providing some concrete direction one way or another for the group is, and again, I'll ask the question
Yeah.
on that comment, Michael, what are you going to do with that? Is it going to become another action? Are you going to rewrite some wording? I just
Well,
want to make sure we're hitting this correctly.
This is-
yeah, and I
this is-
think this is a twofold task here, right? If I'm understanding correctly, commission members and Nate are looking to make sure that there are some objective criteria for determining whether buildings are significant, which is important for future decisions here, and making sure that there's a standard operating procedure for properties slated for demolition. I do think those are complementary, but they are distinct and separate actions. To the former, there is not one source, right, that's going to be fully authoritative. And that is, I think, existing practice, right? You look at your existing survey right now, which has informed local landmarks, but there's also the national landmarks and the contributing buildings in the district. As you're aware, we've also incorporated state SHPO data as well into making decisions on upcoming action items as well. So I think this question is answered in that you're going to use multiple sources as you're doing now, and Action A pursuing a CLG grant to fund this consultant-led citywide survey is going to go a long way towards that end as well, right? I suspect that survey has informed a lot of commission procedures in the last 25 years. So I'm not trying to be short. I think that they are separate and distinct things that can stay separate through Action E, Action D, among others. Yeah, hopefully I'm understanding that correctly, but
Yeah.
right, yeah. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Thanks, Michael. I'm just
Yeah.
gonna, Cindy made I think a really good point here, and I just want to take time to give that credence.
Mm.
Oh God, which one is it? This one. She pointed out, and I think this is to Aaron's point, is that the current, where's it at? You see, I'll see my screen now. It's got the ordinance on it.
Yep.
So she says historic structure, historic site, and historic district designation criteria. And so she pointed out, it's like we already have established criteria via ordinance that identifies whether or not something is historically or significant. And so I completely, Cindy's like, why are we talking about this? I forgot about this. And now that I recall it, I think this would serve the purpose of maybe what you were getting at, Aaron, is that per ordinance, right? Like maybe that's just the language that's within the stuff that Michael was talking about, where he says, it's significant, historically significant based on the criteria in the municipal ordinance. Would that be sufficient to help round out that goal?
For individual buildings, absolutely.
I
And
see.
my concern, well, if I can take just, I'll try to keep this to like 90 seconds, but I did the kind of inventory I'm talking about where we did entire streets of an entire neighborhood. And 25 years later, there had been, based on that study, nearly $1 billion of investment in that neighborhood. And a lot of the stuff that had been recorded earlier had been torn down and it was completely changed. When I moved, I asked the city if they wanted it, and they looked at these long, skinny photographs of entire blocks, and they were completely knocked out. And they took it and they put it in the archives, and it's become an important thing. That speaks to the historic character of that place. And I think it's more than just the buildings, it's the place itself. It's Viroqua. What have we lost? Those parking lots around here, what was there before? Do we have pictures of that? Maybe we do.
You look
But
at the Main Street book, there's a
Yep.
lot.
well, I understand, but my point is that do we need to continue to do that? That's why we do an historic preservation plan every X number of years. And we should have that baseline so that we know that in 2025, this is what Main Street looked like. This is what that neighborhood over there looked like. And I think that would be a great thing. Action C actually has the possibility of doing that kind of thing if we were to do it. But my question about action D was, what's the definition of historically significant? And you're saying that's in this document.
And I think
Yeah, and since our last meeting, we actually just had, it was previously local, state, or national landmark, and we have added that phrase, or a property otherwise determined to be historically significant based on section 1744 as shown on the screen for this reason, right? Because it takes into buildings like the Opera House, which is neither of these things, but could be determined to be historically significant, right? And surely that's not the only one that is kind of potentially in the crosshairs of demolition, right?
Michael, you can go ahead and resume.
Yeah. 1 minute here. So
I think we're generally content with the language. I mean, I am now. I am generally content with the language as it's
sure.
now. Is there any concrete changes, Aaron, based on what you just said, that you would like inserted into this particular action to get it where you want it to be?
Just a reference to where historically significant is defined, I think.
Oh,
Is that what you just said, that you added that reference to the code?
this here, but I could include the specific ordinance language.
Yeah. Well,
Yep.
or just refer to the ordinance.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yep, I'm making that note now.
Okay.
Cool, thank you. Got it. Okay, and please interrupt me if I'll keep going though here. So, and mindful of time too. I know we're kind of getting close, but going through action E here. This has not changed. We've just populated a little bit further, which is, we've used some map layers for this plan and thought it would be really helpful to include kind of an online map of all the landmarks. That could also include images and other information associated with each resource. And we thought it would be really helpful, not just for city staff, but for county staff. This is we'll be producing this and sending this to uh, you guys as this is done. And it could also be used, sorry. We also say it could be used by other partners for like other preservation oriented tasks like walking tours, things like that. But primarily it's for city and staff use. It's just nice to have that layer as they're doing spatial analysis. Action F, we've changed this up a little bit here too. Cindy, you'll note that we've kind of omitted some of the jargon like 3D scanning and digital twins. It's kind of a bit much, and this gets to the same thing. But this is the purpose here is to create a scan of a building that can be used for marketing to developers. We also include, because this is something our firm does fairly regularly, an estimated cost for a typical Main Street style building. This is one where party walls are shared, 25 to 50 foot, 25-foot frontage is fairly common here. So we're trying to at least right size this to not be intimidating if that it would be cost prohibitive. I think 18 to 20,000 was the original data point that Cindy was sharing. That would be for a fairly large building. So we've just dialed this in a little bit more. We might not have time to discuss this. I just will reiterate for action G here that this is very malleable. So much so that I've changed it. So what I'm showing here since our meeting last week is consider local landmark designation and or individual listing to the National Register of Historic Places for these properties listed. Some of you will recall we segmented these by 2 separate actions last month. This was residences would get a local landmark designation and either cultural, religious, commercial buildings or civic buildings would be slated for National Register status. And the reason was that was particularly so that they could be eligible for historic tax credits and get that funding source. But I think that was a bit confusing and a little getting ahead of ourselves, meaning that, some folks might want the local protections that local landmark designation could afford. And this is why we've at least put at this point that it is for the commission to decide as is suitable, maybe based on correspondence with commission members, property owners, what is the best route to go. And I'll also repeat again that this is malleable. We think the commercial properties are fairly strong candidates, especially for National Register listing. But there are a number of residences here. The ones that I've noted here, I say these properties have been categorized as determined eligible or potentially eligible by the Wisconsin Historical Society. That eligibility is National Register listed, right? This is what I've used to determine this list here, but I would defer to commission expertise, that lived experience of another property over another. I think this is just where we have to have a discussion, right? So we can have that discussion now, or if you need a bit more time to look at these as well and put some more over others, I'm happy to wait for that as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yes, it does.
Okay.
Making it local or,
Yeah, and from my perspective, I need some objectivity here, right? And what I would use as the preservation planner is like year-built attributes. The county doesn't have that, right?
the what?
From there, I look at the State Historic Society database, and this is what I have to have something objective to hold on to, but I also need something subjective to hold on to, but that can't come from me as an outsider, right? So I think some of these we're probably on the same page, but some folks might say, well, why this house over another, right? And so we could generalize it and say, our other houses to be determined by the commission. But this is the objectivity that I have right now. And so, not trying to invite more work for all of us. I would just welcome input here to make sure we're pretty dialed in more than just what you might see here.
To me, I think that's why we want a survey done, is so we would get an idea of what all the buildings are in the city that are worthy of historic designation. So that, to me, we don't have to figure all this out if we're able, but this is a good list for sure. And some of these have local
Yeah.
now. My comment, my feeling about local versus national is local is so much more doable. Plus it gives
Mhm.
building protection. National is expensive and it doesn't give the building protection, but it gives it the tax credits. So.
Right. Right. I know there are pros and cons with both, right? And I don't think the action can stay as is. It certainly is up to commission members to modify this, right? This isn't kind of etched in stone. I think if a survey was more recent, it would be helpful too, but 25 years of time passing, all of these properties have changed in some way, and hopefully we've done, in addition to the state survey data, like we've also done windshield surveys and street view surveys on Google. Like, I wouldn't put them on here if I didn't think that they would still be good candidates, but it would just be nice to have a more up-to-date survey to inform this, right? So again, I think it's a good faith effort, but would welcome some input now or later. Yeah, and Nate, I think it's becoming pretty clear. I can certainly stay on until the Parks Committee meeting coming up, but I'm happy to keep going through, also mindful of the fact that we might need to,
Yeah.
We can go to 6. Randy wanted to say something.
Michael,
oh,
would it
sure.
make sense to put at the end or the beginning saying suggested places could include but not limited to? So that
Hmm.
this isn't cut in stone that these are the only things, but
That sounds good.
That makes sense to me. And I guess it just gives you the opportunity to look at these as a first pass and then refine them a bit more. Yeah, let me just write that down. So properties. Okay, yeah, thank you for that. Cool. Yeah, the other thing here, we'll go on to action H. This has been added a little bit more, and this was talking about modifying the boundaries of the Viroqua Downtown Historic District, primarily to include the Opera House, the Modern Woodman of America Hall, and I can't remember the historic name, but I believe this is the law office at the corner of East Court there, part of the old livery building. And to cut to the chase, like the purpose here is to bring these in as eligible properties, contributing properties that could be utilizing historic tax credits. Now,
I did speak to Jason again on this.
yeah.
And if you try to amend or add something or take something away,
Mhm.
they require you to go through every building that's in that to make sure it still qualifies. So we could possibly lose something if we tried to add to the Main Street Historic District.
Mhm.
Opera House, he said they wouldn't even consider till the metal's off the side of the building.
Yes,
That one specifically.
right.
It's like
That
they wouldn't consider the bathhouse till it had a roof. So,
Oh, sure.
yeah.
Yeah, no doubt, right? Contributing properties, right? Sometimes contributing can become non-contributing based on alterations and vice versa. So, yeah,
Sure.
I think
They
I,
can
I
thing they want to a building. So it would make sense they'd want to go through every one of them again because there's no rules that said they couldn't have changed it,
mhm,
the exterior of it. So I see why
right.
they require it.
Yeah, I'm mindful that this is a tall order. There is precedent, right? To do such a thing. This is something our firm has assisted with before, but um, I guess I would caution the commission, or not caution, just encourage the commission to see like if this is maybe deleted, do these properties get um, listed elsewhere as just priority items potentially, or do you wait until a survey occurs to bring these into the mix? I think I would just caution that some might be a race against time. The Opera House is a bit more dilapidated than the other two listed here. So, yeah, but certainly not. I'm not precious to this one. Just if it's a priority for commission members to see these elevated, we might want to either retain them here or elevate them in another action somehow, if that makes sense.
For them to be nominated for a local or national historic designation individually, is what I'd say. I would risk losing our historic district.
Yeah.
Yeah, what do folks think about that?
You pointed this out, Cindy. I also I had to call Jason Tisch about another issue anyway, and we did talk about that, and he did confirm it. The thing I like about leaving this, about the possibility of leaving this in, is the first sentence says, evaluate the feasibility of modifying, and you've done that, but that doesn't mean that we should take this out. We still have the opportunity to evaluate if something else changes. So if the Opera House sheet metal comes down and we take a look at it, you know, it 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 would still probably require the owners to be willing to do it and move forward and so forth. But you know, and then what you're saying is so designated as an individual property.
Yes, then we don't have to worry about losing our historic district. Anything in the historic district.
The only thing I could see, Cindy, is that keeping it on there in case the rules change, right? If the fundamental rules change about historic district where we're no longer in jeopardy of losing it, is why it would make sense to keep it as evaluation. But if you've done your due diligence, say like, this is really dicey, I don't even think we should consider changing historic district. I see where you're coming at on that, but rules do change and, get amended quite a bit. And so if they do make it easier, saying like some legislation comes through that makes it easier to add without fear of losing, then it'd be a game changer, right? But
You want to take it out?
We have thought about combining Action G and H2 to basically leave it up to the commission to say, well, they could be individually listed here, or the district could be modified. It just got really lengthy to put that all in Action G that way. So, we could qualify this further to say, should it not be feasible, an alternate approach would be individual listing for these properties. Can certainly include that language just kind of as a release valve, so to speak, or plan B, just in case that, you've evaluated it, now what?
What does everyone think? They want to keep it, or they want to just take those properties and put them in Action G? I just don't, yeah, well, someday, I guess I hope that somebody down the road would realize we could lose it all if we start doing that. But-
So you think it hurts to leave it in?
Well, I just, why? Why do it anyway? What are we gaining?
Well, if they do change the requirements.
But what are we gaining if we do add more buildings to it? We already have a downtown historic district.
If we can add the buildings, that we add protections to the buildings.
It doesn't add protection. Not the national one.
And doesn't it also give incentive for, or tax incentives?
Only if they apply for them before they do any changes. So that's why I say I don't know, I'll go with whatever you
And
guys think. But
It's not requiring that we do that, right? It's suggesting that we do that.
I know, but it makes it sound like it's a good idea.
It could be, you would have to do a good assessment to know that.
But what's the why anyway? We have a historic district.
It's not saying it's
are
a
we
good
saying?
idea. It says evaluate the feasibility.
I think by leaving it in there, it keeps the door open to future evaluations as things change, or, if we can go through and make sure that that nothing has changed enough to lose something. Like, we can't lose the district, right? One building could get knocked out and we
Well-
get 3 in. I'm just random.
I don't know.
So that's why
I don't understand why we would bother wasting the money to do it I don't know. Just my opinion. So whatever the group thinks.
we don't have to do everything like exactly as this lays out too, right? Like, as things change in the future, you can.
Lucy, what do you think? You want to keep it in? Randy? Karen?
I'm sorry, I would leave it in maybe with the proviso that unless it negates the existing historical district.
But you'd have, well,
Establish the feasibility of modifying the boundaries unless it negates the existing boundaries.
To me, they would, well, it would be at the same point we're out now. They would look into and say, oh, gosh, we could lose it all. So let's not do it. I would hope that's what they would say. We could lose some buildings. Yeah.
Yeah, if let me try to see if I can make another pass that would include that proviso of, unless it jeopardizes the the status of contributing buildings already recognized in the district. Admittedly, my experience is pretty limited here. I have not seen precedent for that, like losing wholesale a district. But yes, there are properties that are substantially altered, that may change contributing buildings to non-contributing, right? That's correct. So let me see if I can like make another pass at that, at least to say, unless it jeopardizes the integrity of this district. I'll also add, these are just notable properties. I think the former Viking Inn could also be, that's a fairly intact facade, unpainted brick, second story, the fenestration, cornice, that's all intact, right? And the facade is at the storefront is modified, but like, I would maintain that could be a worthy add too. The challenge is it's not contiguous right now, right? And the bank really kind of undermines that. So that could also be an Action G item too, right? I just think some of these where it's a little like gray area, it's close to a district, you really don't want to lose any more than what you have. I don't think you would lose the spirit of that through the existing Action G and A. Just, I guess I want to keep that in the forefront of commission members' minds, right? Like there are some of these that are really close, but it's just up to you whether you want to put them in, consider a district or
Mike?
national register. Yep.
Mike? Hey, so just based on what everybody said, maybe the easiest fix is just to add a couple words that says evaluate the feasibility, potential benefits and risks of modifying the boundaries.
I like that.
Sure.
I like that.
Yes, and potential risks. Yep, got it. Okay. Of modifying. Cool.
Okay,
Thank you.
onward.
Yes, thank you. Okay, action I, work of Verney County Historical Society and Wisconsin Historical Society to research possible archaeological sites. For example, the cave near Eckhart Park. The reason for this action is some preservation plans will have archaeological sites. I do not have that data or any information to really write content, meaningful content in the historic preservation plan. I'm aware of the cave. I've not been in the cave. Hopefully that is not happening right now, but it just feels like that action is warranted just to have that section of an upcoming plan. Any documentation would be included there. So
At the museum about it, I was looking at it yesterday.
oh,
But-
nice.
Yeah.
Let me move on to goal 2. Some of these should be fairly straightforward. Program administration and management. Action A is fairly straightforward. Require all VHPC members, especially new members, to participate in NAPC training. We do have this is in the tables, National Association of Preservation Commissions, and some example training classes that can be taken. Action B, require that all city departments consult the historic resource inventory. That's section 2 of this plan before issuing permits. This includes locally designated properties or landmarks, properties individually listed on the National Register, and properties that are contributing to a National Register district. This effort ensures the certificate of appropriateness is completed and reviewed. Arguably, this is standing operating procedure. This just puts it as an action. This has been refined from our meeting last week. So action, yes.
Any district, because we have a national register or historic district and we have a local historic district.
That's true. I believe I had that covered through locally designated landmarks, but I can just specify that further.
Since you said you stood the National Register district out.
So Cindy, we ran into this recently. If something's a national historic district, the certificate of appropriateness isn't necessary.
Correct.
So just because something like the national period, whether it's a district or a place, does not require us to go through the certificate of appropriateness, only the local one. So I think that was part of my question is like require all city departments consult the historic resource inventory.
Hmm.
Is I see that the effort is to ensure certificate of appropriateness, but what is the point of doing that if there is no certificate of appropriateness necessary, right? Like, I think that continues to be a concern on this one is why are we forcing city departments to do something if there's no reason to do it? I mean,
Or
unless
it's
it's
the locally.
for the, right. So if we just get rid of the national and say on the local ones we do this, that rings true, but
I think it's nice for the people to know that it is. I think it's nice for the city to just make aware that people have property on the national district or it's a nationally designated building in itself, whether they have to do a COA or not. I think it's really good that
Sure.
make them aware.
and if that's the case, let's make sure the intent matches up with that. Because right now the intent only says this ensures a certificate of appropriateness is done. And if there's additional intention, let's make sure that's noted, right? So like either that the proper forms are filled out or that it creates general awareness within city departments of where historic buildings are. Right? Like I that's one of my biggest things, group, when Cindy and I and Randy talked about this is like for staff and for future commission members, understanding the why about how action steps got on this document, I think is really
Mhm.
otherwise we were wondering, why the hell would we do that? Right? Understanding that why I think is one of the most powerful things we can document.
How about you could add this effort, yeah, I'm on. This effort ensures a certificate of appropriateness is completed and reviewed if required.
Hmm.
It's also, you just said, like, we also want awareness.
Yes,
And to build general awareness of historic or potentially historic buildings.
yes.
Yes. Got it. Okay. Let me take some of both of these comments and update this. But yes, I agree with that. I will clarify that language further. Sure. Got it. Okay. Action C, you'll recall this language has been changed. Originally, this phrase was that was used here was a demolition by neglect ordinance. That is a fairly common phrase to use for such an ordinance. We've changed this a bit, and Cindy, I know you've suggested a change to the number of business days from 30 to 45, which we can talk about. But this is, amend this section of the Baroka Code of Ordinances to allow the Commission 30 business days to comment on the proposed demolition of a local, state, or national landmark. The intent of this action is to provide a window of opportunity for property owners, members of the commission, and community members to explore alternatives to demolition, including but not limited to renovation, relocation, finding a buyer who will rehabilitate the structure.
The demolition is for any building, whether it's a landmark or not.
Yeah, I have not included the or resource or property potentially significant as determined by the commission, but I can certainly do that. That would be in line with some other actions as well.
It's 10 business days now, isn't it? Or 15? 15. We just
15.
want to increase to 30. Yeah, well, we can ask for 60. I don't know.
Because if it's, if it's 15 or 30 and it's no big deal, then it's no big deal. But if it is a big deal and we need to actually demonstrate why, that might take some time. I would say.
This would have to go through the council.
Yeah, I mean, in the ordinance, update would. It is interesting though, because one thing you pointed out is the difference between any old building, I shouldn't use that, any building, or any historically significant building, right? So ones that we've identified, that's on the list, on the survey, we do the CLG, we do the survey, we have a list of like, oh, these are all the buildings we really want to target. I would understand if one of those buildings comes up on a demo permit, it's like, oh, we've identified that one as one we really want to keep an eye on. We need 60 days. Versus there's an old crappy shed right, that is not on our list, nobody cares about it, and it has to come down because it's a danger. You know, I think the concern of the council is we have to wait 60 days for that as well, potentially, right? And so I think maybe being able to sometimes having one process for all situations creates the anxiety. And I think by separating it and have sort of like escalating timelines based on higher level priority items would make sense. And I think the council could maybe find a little bit more palatable. Just
But-
my thought.
But we do have the provision where only 3 of us have to approve a demolition permit. So that if it's the crappy shed or garage, we can get it taken care of
Fair enough.
right away.
But either way, updating the ordinance to
Yeah, I don't think they'll go
strengthen
for
that
60 days.
process is, I think, what they get at, right?
Yeah, I
Mhm.
think we're not talking about the, the crappy shed side of things. And the designated, the identified historically significant side, that speaks for itself. But, I noticed the 305, the Proctor House on 305 Jeff, is listed there. But 2 doors down is another beautiful brick arts and crafts building
Mhm.
that is not on that list. And, if for some reason, say a fire or something, or no, not say a fire, but if for some reason that building is threatened, shouldn't there be some language in there that really allows for the possibility of saving that resource that we would otherwise consider to be really significant? So the 60 days. And the other thing is, I think it's good to go to the council and point this stuff out and get them to approve it.
No, I don't disagree. What if for now, Cindy, because I think what we're trying to do is build the ordinance right now
Yeah.
instead of just talking about building it in the future. So what if for now we just said amend that section, don't put a time on 30 business days, because by just saying we're going to amend that section to allow the Viroqua Historic Presentation more opportunity to comment on the proposed, and then that way larger spectrum of options about how we would go about amending the ordinance is available to us, and just narrowly focusing on the time frame.
I like that.
So something to the degree of allow the Historic Preservation Commission more opportunity to comment on the proposed demolition. So not quantifying it.
XX business days.
I guess I just like, I understand what you're saying, Nate, but like he was saying, some of the buildings that are gonna come up that, are, oh my gosh, they're gonna tear that down. It's not historically designated, but wow. We don't want to see that happen. And we wouldn't have anything to stand on if we go by, it has to be designated or part of a survey first.
And I'm not saying that you wouldn't extend the timeline. I think that should be part of the additional tools in your tool belt. I'm just saying that the ordinance probably needs more than just a massaging of that part. It probably needs some other changes too that aren't just this 30-day timeline related. And so
I agree with that.
I think you just write it in a way that it leaves more of your options open for how the ordinance is amended.
So, yeah. I would look to revising the demolition ordinance.
Yeah, you're basically wanting to revise the ordinance to strengthen the Viroqua Historic Preservation Commission's opportunity to influence
Yeah,
to a,
demolition.
to a better benefit, something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, that's good.
Is there something in this about demolition by neglect specifically? Not necessarily action C, but later on?
Yes,
Okay.
it is an action E here, which we could get to. And yeah, we should do that. So I'll cover action D here briefly. You'll recall, Nate and Cindy, this was kind of buried into the appendix where it did not need to be. So we talked about this last week. This is a new action altogether for commission members to see. So I'd like to move to action E though, just to kind of put a close the loop on Aaron's comment here. So we changed this, right? We've omitted that phrase demolition by neglect. Investigate the feasibility of adopting an ordinance that requires property owners to stabilize deteriorating buildings, historic buildings within 12 months, imposes escalating fines for noncompliance, and establishes a receivership process allowing the city to intervene when owners fail to maintain their properties. And tasked here with reviewing Wisconsin state law, Wisconsin peer communities, and NAPC best practices when investigating.
Aaron's giving you a soft clap. If you couldn't see.
Oh.
I didn't want to make a lot of noise, but I'd clap otherwise. Thank you.
Yes, and I think my goal here is that I don't have the time to do further vetting, but I think that there's ample precedent statewide, and then NAPC should guide you a bit further here too. So I think there's plenty of groundwork to do that investigation. So
Michael, I don't want to delay because I know we're getting tight on time, but I think within these goals, I think it's really important that we be explicit when using phrasing. So when you say deteriorating historic buildings, is it historically designated or historically significant? Because those two words are not interchangeable. And we should be, when we write these, we should be probably really clear about which ones are we going after. Because in my understanding, when I read action E, it's historically designated. I don't hear historically significant. And Aaron's shaking his head and said, no.
Well, and I mean, your ordinance allows both, right? And some of my phrasing previously is, landmarks at the local, national, state level, or something that has been determined significant by the commission. I just haven't been that verbose in every action, but I certainly can here. I think it's both, right? I mean, that's how we have previous actions written, and it can certainly put that in.
I think, yes, I think if we're just saying investigate the feasibility, I think leaving it open to exploring all options makes a lot of sense. I just want to be clear because, again, my interpretation of that sitting one seat away from Aaron, it was very different. That's for more explicitness.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean that was a time I could certainly, be specific as we have in other sections of like, all the landmarks, local, national, and then or otherwise determined to be historically significant. I mean that kind of covers all the bases, right? Hopefully that's a bit more specific. So and it's consistent. So I think that's probably would address your concern and have us all on the same page. So that's for action, if that's okay. Just two, yes.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Maybe that there is a definition section at the front of the
end.
doc or at the end, yeah. That just whatever the language is.
Yeah, let me check to see if that is fully covered. Yeah, thank you. I know we have definitions. I will review those though, make sure, significance, for example, is covered. Landmark is covered. Action F for goal 2, explore the feasibility of establishing facade easements for rehabilitation projects receiving city financial assistance. Action G, build a dedicated historic preservation webpage on the city website. This is new. It was just based off of comments from last month, meaning if we have all these resources, let's digitize them and get them on the website, which could also include, a map of historic resources as well, whether the city produces that or the county produces that, and you link to that. So
that will be an action item like the first year, won't it?
I can look at that and see where it is. Let me take a look and see. I'll scroll there as I'm going. So that is goal 2, action G, I believe. I have that as a 1 to 3 year time frame.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll come back to that idea of looking at the time frame and the partners here in about 5 minutes, so we can talk about workflow for that too. For other actions, I try to be very specific on like what handout should be updated. I think there was some concern about using the phrase publish or create something new. There's plenty of new or existing content there that could be refreshed. So you'll see some of those tasks here and some specificity on like where it should go, like update it, but then also make sure it's available on the city's website. Action I here, I had mentioned earlier, just trying to make sure that there's a two-way street between the data the commission has and the data that Wisconsin Historical Society has. So this task here, action I, says review the eligible and potentially eligible properties on the state inventory. You'll recall this did say like produce a report every 3 to 5 years. That was a bit much. That's not necessary. It just says here this will assist the commission in identifying any new inquiries or data that may have been coordinated directly with the Wisconsin Historical Society. As I mentioned earlier, my hunch is that that would be very minimal and that it's probably going to be the data you provide to them, like when a survey gets updated. But this just ensures like if the commission, or rather if SHPO is getting any information, that you just have access to that as well. If that makes sense. And then finally, action G, just this previously talked about just updating sustainable design standards. We've specified this a bit further and said here the intent of the action is to embed energy efficient and environmentally responsible practices directly into the commission's decision-making process rather than treating them as separate and competing aims. So the example here might be if there's a solar panels attached to the roof of a building, that is, a local, state, or local or national landmark or contributing building in the district, right? Now, for contributing buildings or properties using tax credits, like they're going to have to align to standards. But even for local properties, there's some technical reports that can be providing some guidance here, right? So this is just based off of new content that we discussed, Cindy and Nate, last week.
It had come up in Milwaukee when I went to one of those conferences. That's why.
I don't want to cut this too short. I'm just looking at time and I want to talk a little bit about the workflow for how we're going to do, I guess, review the time frame and partners. So I'll hold this. I just want to go to this next page. I've put these down as preliminary timeframes and identified potential partners. For the recreation plan, we've already had an iteration of that, but I'm mindful that this is the first time that the Preservation Commission has looked at these. I'm wondering if the best way to review this is to have commission members provide their input to Cindy, and then Cindy gets the kind of final say on where these points go. What do you think?
So, Michael, this document you have has not been shared with the commission members. I think I would recommend, and I don't know, I think Cindy probably agrees with me on this, is that we get this out to the commission members and that we note specifically of what we didn't get to today and set up a path for them to submit their input.
So if that was to happen, then I can incorporate. So I need to incorporate some comments from Cindy and Aaron, or at least address them. Those will either be resolved comments or no action or kind of up for discussion if there's other things. I can produce that latest document and then send that over. Does that sound good to everybody? It would basically be the final draft document that has all the maps and tables and figures. That would be comments reflected by commission members so far. Does that work?
Yeah, when would that be?
As quick as I can.
Tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning.
We're not a month from now because we want to input so you can change it if you need to.
Yeah, I mean, if I was to look at the calendar now, we really have to reduce the number of iterations if we're going to go to the commission for final, review and approval I think that's the 28th was what Kristen discussed with Nate last week. I could have all the comments incorporated by end of week and send the final layout document via email. Now, as I mentioned, some will be no action, there will be some comments, and you can take a look at those and see as to why I've justified the resolution or no action. But if I could have comments back by the 16th, so that would leave a week, that would allow me time to get the final layout document ready. Nate, can you remind me when I have to when the commission packets have to be created. That would be
Oh.
the 28th, I think is what's on the calendar for the next commission meeting.
Are we talking about November or October?
October.
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 Because you're talking about approval by the council. Or are you talking about, because the council would meet at the 28th of this month. And
Oh, okay. My apologies. I have,
what
yeah.
I'll say, Michael, is we'll need to, based on where we're at after today,
Mhm.
I think there may have to be some conversations about timelines, but let's confirm that offline because I need to get a calendar in front of me, and
Yeah.
I think you need to take stock of how many changes there are.
Mhm.
And so let's take care of that offline. Does anybody have any more like quick comments? We have about 5 minutes here. Can I post something to the group, Cindy?
Yes.
I'm curious what everybody else's thoughts are on the layout. Particularly the fact that the goals section is using a 3-column layout. And I'll just say it, I personally really struggle with it. I would prefer less words per page and just give each goal its own space. Like, right, like just say goal 5, its own page, and mostly these aren't going to be printed out for, they're going to live digitally. And so if part of our goal is to make this something we want to review and we want to look at and we want to have up on the screen here, doing it in this format, I think just makes it challenging to engage with. And I think having it just like let a whole goal breathe on a page by itself and make the action steps bigger. It just seems abrupt and crammed in.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's like
Yeah.
that over the left-hand column is goal 4. And I'm not seeing the rest of the rest of the actions on goal 4.
Right.
And that would be really helpful, I think.
So
Will that
Yeah,
work?
yeah, I agree with the bullet points are helpful, but yeah, each page has a goal and then some more white space between the bullet points too, even just spreading it out so it's it's an easier read would be great. It won't feel so dense. So in terms of,
sorry to blow up your design.
Well, and yeah,
that-
it's at the end. I will say right now, like our formatting is pretty much dialed in, like because at this point, we have there's a Word document that gets fed into this, and to change something at the front end is going to roll 80 pages of formatting, and like there's just no time to
right.
do that, right? But at the end here, we can certainly change that layout, especially because it's not like, asset heavy. There's not a lot of pictures. There's not a lot of maps. There's no competition, right, with other assets. So that makes sense to me on chapter 5.
I also don't think we need to be afraid of page breaks. Like, I don't think there you know what I mean? Like, so if you need to utilize a page break in order to not have to rebuild another part of the,
Mhm.
I get, you're talking about there's a cascading effect of changes we make at this point, but I also
Right.
don't think we need to be afraid with just saying like, hey, page break. And that way it doesn't influence everything down the stream.
Right, right.
well, I was gonna, since you said it first, there is not there a lot of assets in terms of visuals, and that's something that I think would add to it, but then again, maybe this isn't the place for that. We save that for our own website.
Yeah, and I'll encourage folks if it's okay, like Nate, we can talk offline of how things get sent, but like what you're seeing here is the layout document, right?
Mm.
So this will have assets, maps, tables and figures. I think
Okay,
I think it's pretty asset rich
okay,
as an entire document. Um, yeah, so I guess I would caution about putting a lot of that in the goals section.
okay,
Um, So, but yes, and I think a lot of these have been addressed even last week, Cindy, and you wanted to look at some comments
Mm,
or incorporate some things. So, yeah. So
great.
yeah, I'm just going through the document as we have it now, right? We didn't want to send this because there was already stuff, you're looking at another document we didn't want to confuse, but
Great,
it's all in here. So
great, great.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we better go. Let's see.
Yes.
Thank you.
You all a ton for your input and help.
Yeah, trying to find my agenda here. Motivation.
Okay, team, I'll leave this meeting and see you on the other one.
Okay. I did something by. I did.
All right,
something.
thanks. Mhm.
Thanks, everyone.
Mhm.
You know, it says we'll do this, but we have to figure out how to do it.
Did you dismiss us, Cindy?
No, I'm trying to find my agenda.
We got to set the date of the next meeting.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
7.
Sorry, are we confirming?
No.
it?
Okay, I've got it. Let's see here. Update Welcome Center. We're not gonna do discussion possible action. We're not gonna do. Say next meeting, we've got Monday, November 10th at 4:30. Does that work?
November?
Okay.
10th.
Okay, period for public comment. I don't see anybody that's gonna comment here. Okay, adjournment.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
First by
Okay.
Randy, seconded by Lucy. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Thank you. And I would encourage you all to read that stuff and maybe review the ordinance and some of those handouts that we have, because they do have that
Hmm.
stuff in them. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
You too.
Did we? All right. Let's end
The
this.
10th?